Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard from lastcar.info coming at you live after the conclusion of the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona. A race that had just about a little bit of everything here. Both a dramatic finish there in overtime, some very hard hits, and a downright frightening accident for Ryan Preece. It's good to see, of course, most importantly, Preece get out of the car. Well, of course, if we have any other updates on his condition throughout the show, we'll definitely discuss that here as well. But most importantly, good to see him out of the car, and we'll see what the situation is there as well. Very much the same for Ryan Blaney, who was actually checked and released after his very hard hit with Ty Gibbs after 94 laps into the race here. A last place battle that was a little bit unusual, at least in the case of a super speedway, factored in by not only a big wreck, but also an oil leak being a factor with different drivers here along the way. And again, Chris Buescher with his third win of the season, pending the results of post-race inspection, continuing just what has been a tremendous last few weeks here in the summer to lead into the playoffs. And, of course, the other person we have to talk about in this equation is Bubba Wallace, who has now secured his first spot for 23-11 in the playoffs, his first playoff spot and another spot for 23-11, now getting both cars into the field with Tyler Reddick winning earlier this year at Circuit of the Americas. No shortage of storylines, and we'll definitely be talking about all of these here at the exact same time for sure. First things first, again, congratulations to Ryan Preece. Roush Fenway Keselowski are again looking tremendous through this stretch of the season. It seems like it's only a matter of time before Brad Keselowski breaks through and finally brings the number 6 back to victory lane. If memory serves, it was actually this race that we last saw the number 6 go to victory lane under the Roush Fenway banner there with David Reagan when he scored his first Cup Series victory in the UPS Ford. The team has been around for more years since then. They had some bad stretches there with Trevor Bayne and Ryan Newman and Matt Kenseth. But again, they're looking just as strong as they had back in Daytona back in the February and as they have at these other tracks here. And yeah, that's going to definitely be one thing to talk about. Certainly, again, congratulations to Bubba Wallace for the playoff spot. I guess, yeah, probably the first thing we should talk about more is certainly the Ryan Preece accident. Again, good to see from what we've seen in the broadcast there that, again, he did get out of the car. But within the last 10 laps of the race, in a very physical race, I would have to say, very, very aggressive passes for the lead. We saw a lot of 3-wide racing out of the next-gen car, which it seemed like we weren't going to see. And clean racing through the first half of the race, really. Seemed like it was very competitive and people giving each other enough distance, but it was only a matter of time until something boiled over. Preece's accident, again, talking about this on social media just a few minutes ago, very reminiscent of Darrell Waltrip's accident back in 1991. He and Joe Ruttman hooked bumpers. I believe Alan Kowicki got into them, and very much the same situation. Probably, if you are going to have a flip in just about any of these cars, and we've seen this out of even much older cars, 1980 and earlier, you get a car that's hooked sideways on that back straightaway, you're going to get, a pretty spectacular accident. And thankfully, those have been a bit more rare in recent years, as Dale Jr. mentioned during the broadcast. But very reminiscent, Darrell Waltrip's accident, very much a similar situation, shed a lot of body panels to the point where pictures of the car, you could see Waltrip behind the wheel there, just trying to ride it out as the car tumbled through the air. Rusty Wallace's accident in the 1993 Daytona 500 comes to mind, especially with how much height the number 41 car got in this particular accident. And in both those situations there, the drivers were able to climb out, though I'm sure it took a while in both those situations for those drivers to kind of just get their bearings. After those particular accidents. I imagine every care and precaution is being taken with Preece here as well, and treated as seriously as they very well should be. Again, Rusty Wallace's accident in 1993, he had a tangle on the back straightaway. Derek Cope was actually among the drivers that was involved in it there, him and Michael Waltrip. And again, same kind of thing. You have a couple cars that lock bumpers. Somebody goes to the right and gets into the left rear quarter panel and just hooks the other guy to the left. That's, again, probably the riskiest kind of accident you can have. We've had situations where maybe it happens closer to the entrance of the corner. The car usually stays on the ground, even if it was the previous generation of cars. But in this case here, just a crazy situation. Really aside from Harrison Burton's wreck in the Daytona 500 last year, and then of course Chris Buescher's wreck in the 600 last year, it's been very unusual, and especially this one here with, how much of the body was coming apart. I think it's good that there were a lot of pieces that were coming off the car. I think that was the one aspect of the changes that they've made to this car that we weren't really sure how it was going to play out in this case. Of course, they talked a lot about this in Ryan Blaney's accident earlier tonight, that you would have a situation where, again, that the car's body should deform. It should have parts that come off to kind of shed off some of that energy and, really try to, disperse it through the body and through the pieces that are coming off. So it's not going through the driver himself. And I'm hopeful that, we get some more updates on this with Preece going forward, that was the case in this situation here. And then we'll see what the prognosis is for him running Darlington and so forth later this year, this season. First and foremost, just hoping he's doing okay. They're checking him out, as I'm sure they are, and we'll find out what the situation is there. It's interesting to see. It's unusual. Thankfully, it's rare. I think that's the thing that's brought up. But as I said, also, the thing that you really got to keep in mind with, these days, and of course, these cars seem like they're just so top of the line, and of course, they had safety concerns last year, whether it came to being in rear-ender accidents, and of course, the driver that we have to talk about here with his announcement earlier today is certainly relevant to that discussion. That danger is still out there, undoubtedly. You can make these cars as safe as you can. You can have safer barriers. You can do all that. I know people are going to be eager to be pointing at, whether it should be grass or pavement. That debate, rages onward, and I'm sure that this is going to keep that going there at the same time. But that danger is going to be there no matter what. You're going to have high speeds, close proximity between these drivers, and the best you can do is try to learn as best you can from any other accidents that happen. And undoubtedly, NASCAR is going to be doing that with this one. I'm sure they're going to take that one over to R&D and give a closer look at it, just to see how much of the body of the car was, how much of it actually tolerated the accident there at the same time. So we'll see what happens there at the same time. But it's definitely shocking, but it's something you can't forget in this. I know it's fun to watch racing. It's fun to enjoy the competition and the drama and everything that happens between the different drivers out there. To believe, whenever you start to think that, the dangers of the sport are in the past and it's nothing like that now, that's unfortunately when these accidents kind of happen. We think about the Ryan Newman's accident a couple of years ago. That's the situation to keep in mind there. So, thankfully, we've progressed a lot since then. Doesn't mean the progress hasn't been made. But again, only so much can certainly be done. And these drivers know that. These drivers accept that risk, and this is what they love to do. They're going to be able to compete to the very best of their ability. And much like we saw here, even with as close to the finish of this race as Preece's accident was, everybody got back out there and they put on a dramatic finish. Thankfully, everybody, it wasn't anything more serious happening in those last couple of laps, and we still saw a thrilling finish here in this race. So I think we definitely had aspects of that too. We'll talk about this with Ryan Blaney's accident. At the same time, Blaney's, keep in mind, of course, his wreck that he had, at Nashville earlier this year, where he found the concrete barrier at the inside of the track, and it ended up being a situation where that very much hurt him at that moment. Thankfully, not anything too severe, but was a situation that, really there should have been a safer barrier there. We see him in this accident here, and again, the worst possible accident when you're hooked the other direction. If you get into the right rear corner of the car, there's just absolutely nothing you can do there, especially off of turn 4. You're coming off the corner. Ty Gibbs' car breaks loose in front of Christopher Bell, sends the number 12 car up the track, and to the point where the impact actually deformed the wall. You could see how much the NBC actually did a decent job of this, where you could actually see that after the wall rebounded back out. I mean, I usually liken these safer barriers to like paddles in a pinball machine. That they just kind of just bounce the car back out onto the track. And that seemed to be the effect of it, but it didn't entirely go back to its original shape. It just, but again, it's good that, much like we saw with Preece's car and his accident, that the wall did take its share of that impact, that it, crushed in that certain shape there, and that it actually, because that's some more dissipation of energy. Somebody that's more articulate in bringing up, how crash designs and everything like that work can express that much more clearly. But at the end of the day, yeah, if you have something else that's actually just taking its share of the force, thankfully you have the driver being able to walk away and do his interviews within just a couple minutes of the accident there. And thankfully that was the case there with Blaney. So really, again, we had these couple of big hits. We had a dramatic finish. We had, we did not have a different winner this year, so Bubba Wallace makes it into the playoffs. But I think also one thing I was really encouraged by in this race was, again, how clean the competition was for the first half of it, during which we actually had the last place battle play out, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But this reminded me very much of the Daytona 500 earlier this year. I thought the 500 through its first half had really competitive racing. Now, the unfortunate problem with that was that we had so many commercial breaks that it was really hard to get a flow to see what was happening at the exact same time. There was a lot of commercials that were jumping in, and I know that's a consequence of the sport itself, given the fact that that's the biggest event of the year. You're obviously going to have a lot of sponsors coming on board, and that's where they're going to be in the way a lot more than maybe, a race at Nashville or a race at Watkins Glen or something that maybe doesn't get as many viewers. And we saw a little bit of that tonight too. I think that the full screen commercials, it was unfortunate that they couldn't work out something to have more side-by-side commercial breaks, because it seemed like most of the commercials that came in the race's first half were when they were running 3 wide. And really right up to the big accident, about 94 laps into the race, they were running, very competitively. A few people would bail out, but even the drivers that bailed out were still within about 2 seconds of the leader. You had very few drivers that actually dropped off the pace. We'll go into the last place battle now to kind of tie this in. The first of all, you had Chandler Smith, who, by the way, came back to run very well at one point. I was high as third before he got into Almirola, dropped back into the top 10. Had a fine showing after not qualifying for the Daytona 500 earlier this year. He had dropped off the pace. It seemed like they had a fuel pressure issue. Lost a lap under the green because the race had stayed under green for as long as it did. Then you had Brad Keselowski was dropping back through the pack. Another driver that also recovered very nicely in this. Was able to kind of work his way back up there. And then Todd Gilliland, who was actually still in the middle of the pack when he was black flagged by NASCAR. There were reports that he was leaking oil on the track. Apparently something was going on with the oil cooler. Still trying to get additional details from that. I'm sure Front Row Motorsports will have more details on this. But this was unfortunate because Todd had performed so well at Daytona back in the spring. Of course, his dramatic save during the 150-mile qualifiers earlier this year. But Gilliland ends up coming down pit road. They push him behind the wall. NASCAR didn't let them work on the car right behind the garage entrance, and they had to kind of drive the car much further behind the wall there, which is another delay. He ends up losing 15 laps and comes back out there. Now, he's running, last place, multiple laps down, but you have more than half of the race left to go. So kudos to Front Row Motorsports to getting him back out there. Ultimately, I believe he climbed to 31st place by the end when he actually pulled behind the wall. But last place was ultimately decided by the big accident, immediately before which you had a few other drivers that had pit road speeding penalties. That was a bit more of an issue, of course. Denny Hamlin, Riley Herbst were among those and dropped further back in the lineup there. Unfortunately, they got caught up by the pack just in time to be involved in the accident there. Denny Hamlin spinning out, Riley Herbst getting damage in it, and of course the driver that did end up taking last place ultimately when Gilliland took the restart to start stage 3 was Brennan Poole. So unofficially, pending the results of post-race inspection, Brennan Poole now has his second last place finish in the Cup Series, his first since the spring race at Darlington. Now that we go into Darlington next week, we'll see if he's going to be running that race next week or not, but we'll find out what the situation is on that. And this is another wreck that shouldn't be overlooked here at the same time. I was looking over the replay to kind of start putting together the article there during the red flag, and when I was noticing there is that Poole was actually behind Austin Dillon coming off of turn 4. Dillon was running about 15th place on the lead lap. Poole, again, had kind of lost a lap along with Denny Hamlin when they had latched up and were caught up by the lead pack there. So Hamlin was in position to get the lucky dog at the time. The big wreck happens. Hamlin catches Poole at just the worst possible moment, and he cuts to the right, but not until after clipping Poole's rear bumper. Poole's car cut to the left. He hit the inside wall very hard. We haven't seen too many good replays of this to really understand what happened with the 15 car there, but you can see the best angle is from behind the wall from the infield there, and he had a very hard hit there as well. Thankfully, there is a safer barrier on that wall as well. And, again, we saw, what was it? Was it Nelson Piquet Jr. in the Truck Series a few years ago? Hit that barrier. Ryan Ellis in yesterday's Xfinity Series race as well. That was another situation there too. And of course, and this is also shown by NASCAR that Poole was checked and released from the infield care center along with the other drivers that were out of the race from that accident. So that's also very good news at the same time. So some very hard hits, as one would usually expect at the super speedways here. It's very competitive racing at the same time, but this capped not only by Buescher's win, but also of course, the big accident there with Ryan Preece, and we'll hopefully have some more information on that here, hopefully pretty soon, if not later this evening here for sure. But overall, again, I think it was a very competitive race. I think it was a fitting conclusion to the regular season here. It could have easily had anybody that was going to be a different winner punching their ticket in there. Keselowski already being locked in wouldn't have changed anything in that respect, and certainly Kevin Harvick as well. Harvick had really one of his best runs he's had all year, threw some great blocks out there, trying to kind of stay up front there at the same time. Seemed like he was going to be having a real shot at it there, but unfortunately the Roush Fenway-Keselowski duo there were able to kind of work their way past him, and that last restart actually seemed to help because they were actually lined up on the outside line for that restart, and that certainly made the difference there. The question now is Kevin Harvick going to be able to win a race the rest of his final retirement season? That's still up in the air. He's very good at Darlington. The Southern 500, I think, is certainly a big possibility. He's dominated so many races there in the past from being able to run the inside line and run it very fast, which is not usually something you would expect from having to run the outside line for much of the track there. But he could certainly be one to watch. Could also be an opportunity for Keselowski to break through as well, given his pedigree at that track and the wins that he had over with the number 2 team there at Penske. But also Roush Racing had won there before with Mark Martin and other competitors there at the same time. But that'll be the start for the playoffs next week, and that'll certainly be a dramatic turn of events there for them. Bubba Wallace, again, congratulations to him on making the playoffs here. His first ever playoff appearance, came so close to this last year. The heartbreak of that near loss at Michigan last year. This year he still is looking for his first win of the season. But after coming into this race, after his 2 solid performances on the road courses, tracks that he has traditionally not enjoyed, and then to survive this Daytona race here that was as physical as it was, even with as good as Bubba's been at Daytona in the past, was a great way to cap that off. He definitely earned it, and it's going to be interesting to see how he and his teammate Tyler Reddick are going to be performing in the playoffs itself here next week. Looking at the results here unofficially, just checking out, Bubba Wallace in the 12th place finish, which is the same spot that he finished in at Watkins Glen, if I'm not mistaken here. So great job by him at that respect too. Looking at other finishers to the field, Chris Buescher, your winner. Brad Keselowski in the 2nd spot. Eric Almirola in 3rd. Best we've seen out of him since, Atlanta this year. And this time didn't crash out of the lead, so that was a great turnaround for him. Chase Elliott in 4th, comes just short of making the playoffs. Undoubtedly, not having NASCAR's most popular driver in the playoffs is going to be a storyline the rest of this week for sure. Not unprecedented. Dale Jr. was surprisingly transparent about this in his own career back when he and Jeff Gordon didn't make the playoffs in, I believe, 2005. So it really shows just, he can have an off year, but it can also be a positive motivator. And on top of that, last year we saw a lot of drivers that were not in the playoffs actually win in the playoffs, including Chris Buescher, your winner tonight. So that'll be something interesting to see if that comes to pass, especially as Elliott looks for his first Southern 500 win next week. So that'll definitely be a story too. Joey Logano rounds out the top 5, kind of turning around a bit of a sluggish summer for him. here, so it's good to see him kind of turn things around. Alex Bowman as well in 6th, comes up short of a playoff appearance. Kyle Busch in 7th, William Byron in 8th. Byron just barely cleared that accident. I was pretty impressed with how the field just kind of seemed to separate at just the right moment, and perhaps tapping into that Cole Trickle paint scheme he ran a couple years ago. Byron able to kind of drive through it and finish in the 8th spot. Kevin Harvick takes the 9th spot there. Again, I'm sure he was going for that first win there, very nearly had it, but just a little bit too much there at the end. Drops him back to the spot. And the Spire Motorsports teammates taking 10th and 11th. Corey LaJoie was in last place for several laps there, coming to the halfway point there, finishes in 10th. And Ty Dillon, big congratulations to him after finishing last in the dual race and the 500 back in February this year. Matching a feat that was done by Bob Schacht in 1992. Ty Dillon comes back and finishes in the 11th spot. I think his best run of the year, certainly in contention to be one of his best runs, if not that. But a fantastic run for him. Good to see the Gamebridge sponsorship on there. I know that's raised a lot of intrigue as to what may or may not be happening with that team next year. But Ty Dillon certainly distinguished himself with a solid performance tonight. We also saw some great efforts out of a lot of the Busch Series regulars that were in the field here. I mentioned Chandler Smith earlier. He came back to finish 15th at the end of this one, still within 0.6 of a second of the race winner, which is a fine effort for him. But also Austin Hill finishing in 14th, driver that has really become kind of the super speedway legend of the NASCAR Xfinity Series here in recent years. Great effort for him, the Beard Motorsports team, finishing in the 14th spot. Right ahead of them, Michael McDowell, who qualified last in this race and finished there last week. Of course, the Indianapolis winner, who is advancing into the playoffs for the first time since his Daytona 500 win in 2021. Hopes for a better performance than he had at Darlington that year, where he finished last in that race after a crash and pretty much ended his playoff appearance soon after in that round of 16. We'll see if he makes it any further in this round here, with hopefully a better performance there out of the Love's Travel Stops injury this time around. Eric Jones was a fixture in the top 10 at some points in this race. Looked like he and actually Josh Berry, the teammate there in the 42 car, were running pretty well. I thought they were actually kind of running in about the top 15 there for a little bit, and I was kind of wondering if Berry would kind of get up there with some of these other Xfinity regulars. Certainly Mike Rockenfeller had a great run in the Legacy Motor Club entry last week, but unfortunately this time around they end up a bit further back in the order. Eric Jones in the 18th spot, Josh Berry in 22nd along the way there. Daniel Suarez was up front for a little bit, ends up in the 20th spot. BJ McLeod did not get another top 10 in this race, but did finish the race on the lead lap in the 23rd spot. Very reminiscent of his performance at Atlanta in July and the last couple of these races at Daytona in the summer. It seems like he just finds an extra gear out of that number 78 car, so that's certainly good to see. He swapped back in for Josh Bilicki, who will be running the Truck Series race tomorrow for Young's Motorsports. We're doing the show tonight, of course, since the Cup Series is the main focus. We will not be doing a show tomorrow after the Truck Series race, at least I don't plan on doing one. That will be lumped into next week's Darlington show, which will be a week from tomorrow night. On Sunday night leading into Labor Day weekend there. So we'll add that into the show there as part of that discussion. So we'll have that caught up for you guys. Finishing at the tail end of the lead lap, Martin Truex Jr. fell 3 seconds back of the leader there in 24th, and Tyler Reddick ends up the last car in the lead lap in 25th. Denny Hamlin not quite able to get the lucky dog, and much like Chase Elliott was at Watkins Glen last week, is stranded as the first car one lap down, finishing in the 26th spot. Among the other drivers involved in the accidents tonight, Kyle Larson lost 2 laps after the involvement in the lap 94 pile up there, finishes in 27th. Chase Briscoe was your pole sitter, seemed to have some fantastic speed out there, but unfortunately his involvement in the accident with his teammate Ryan Preece ended up dropping him out of the race, finishing in the 30th spot. Todd Gilliland climbing back up there after the oil leak issue, takes 32nd, not 31st as I said earlier there, so a great recovery for that team, although not a great night for him for sure. Austin Dillon, your defending winner of this race, in 33rd spot. Ricky Stenhouse, the Daytona 500 winner, in 34th. Ty Gibbs, of course, being involved in the Ryan Blaney accident, was really looking to be able to win his way in. Had a real shot at it, really, was running, doing exactly what he needed to do, battling Ryan Blaney for the lead. But unfortunately, the car broke loose on him, and that was basically the end of his night there with a wreck. Finishes in the 35th spot, one spot ahead of Blaney. Cindric in 37th, Riley Herbst in 38th, and Poole rounding out the bottom 5. Got to give a shout out to Riley Herbst as well, who qualified well in the number 36 car for Front Row Motorsports. Had a fine showing out there. I think for the early laps, looked like he was actually going for the lead at one point there. Had a couple drivers jump in front of him, but it looked like he was going to have a good piece. Remember, he was 10th in the Daytona 500 driving for Rick Ware Racing back in February. So it's good to see him have a good performance out there, especially with all the frustrations he's had on the Xfinity side. And we'll definitely talk about that more in the Xfinity portion of the show here tonight at the same time. But yeah, a lot of tremendous storylines here. We're going to find out what's going on here for the playoffs and everything forward. And that's going to be kind of our storyline coming up here at the same time. So yeah, let me check through here. I'm just seeing some comments here that are checking out. Oh, let me catch up on these super chats here at the same time. Thank you for these here at the same time. First one here, Beast of Metal 1989. Thank you so much for the super chat here, buddy. I find it amusing, or perhaps bemusing, that NBC is focused on all the things that stayed on Preece's car rather than what came off. Completely unimportant things like the escape hatch and the window net. Again, hopefully that car gets a thorough look at it by NASCAR. You can't really count on the broadcast doing it. They seem to miss a lot of things that are happening. We heard this in the Xfinity race where the broadcasters weren't even able to be on the same page as to whether or not Riley Herbst was done for the day in the Xfinity race yesterday. With this case, yeah, I still take it as a positive that the pieces were coming off the car. But again, yeah, if it's a situation where the window net's coming loose, where it's something that could potentially intrude in the cockpit, that's definitely an issue. The roof hatch at the same time, mentioning that, we did see Preece, looks like he was climbing out through the roof hatch, at least from what we saw during the broadcast there at the same time. Yes, that needs to be looked at too. It seems like not long ago we had a race where a roof hatch blew off of a car at Daytona at the same time. But again, I think it's good. I think we're on the right track with it. I think it's, I'll tell you this, I think it's better if that wreck absolutely had to happen. I think it's way better that wreck happened this year than if it happened in this same race last year. When you had the situation with the fires through the rocker panels, when you had the situations with concussions and the lack of crushability in the car. Because again, you think about Harrison Burton's flip in the 500 last year, that car at first didn't look like it flipped. It looked like it was perfectly intact and they could keep rolling. It's only when you looked at it a bit closer that you realized it actually did some side over rolls there at the same time. So again, I think NASCAR still doesn't want cars flipping over. Whatever they're going to figure out from Buescher's accident. It seemed like with Buescher's accident, the 600, the factor was that wheel coming loose, but still staying close enough to the chassis where it seems like it actually bounces off that wheel and it kind of spring loads that car into the air. And this kind of brings up the whole issue with the grass versus the pavement debate here. Of course, Buescher's accident happened on artificial grass, which they have over at the Charlotte track because of the Roval. So to say that, that the grass is why you have these accidents, we'll see what's happening with this one here with Preece, but it doesn't necessarily have to be entirely the biggest factor. And the other thing you got to look at too is when you pave any of these surfaces, you increase the likelihood of having a wreck like we had with Brennan Poole tonight, like we had with Kyle Busch in the Busch race in 2015, a car that just is locked into a dead-on straight slide into the wall. The driver can't steer out of it, and they're just going to run right into, a barrier that could or could not be protected. As we saw with Ryan Blaney's accident this year, and of course Busch's Xfinity wreck a few years ago, there were still some spots on the track that were not protected there, and it could be a serious wreck in that case. So it could be a situation of exchanging one hazard for another. I'm sure that's going to be, I hope that's going to be considered in discussions of that coming up here at the same time. So we'll see if that's going to be the situation. But I share your concern, especially over, if there's any issues with the escape hatch and the window net. We did see the escape hatch off the car there, and the window net as well. It looked like the crews were actually dropping the window net when they came up to get them. So I don't know if it was a situation where that was coming loose, but if it did, that absolutely needs to be taken seriously because, again, it's not that long ago we had race restart in the All-Star race with the window net still up there too. So that would have been a situation. So I think that there's still some positive indicators going forward. Certainly also the reinforcement in the door of the car. So, the initial contact with Briscoe, for example, Ryan Preece's accident, wasn't anything serious in that situation there. But that's another thing to really talk about. So yeah, hopefully we'll have some more updates on that too. Because that needs to be looked at seriously, but the car still should be shedding parts as terrifying as it looks. And not to say that it's not serious, because it absolutely is, especially for how rare these accidents have been with this car. I mean, this is basically only the third flip we've really seen in this last year and a half, hasn't it? So, I mean, really exceedingly rare. That still needs to be looked at. And it's not unforeseeable to have this kind of wreck, because again, Darrell Waltrip's wreck, Rusty Wallace's wreck started about the same way. And we still have another super speedway race coming up this year with the Fall Talladega event as well. So we'll see what's going to be the situation on that at the same time. But thank you for the super chat. And yes, I agree. That needs to be looked at. But again, I think the important thing to look at the same time is the progress that has been made. And also, where the progress we still need to make with this car going forward. So again, I'm glad the wreck didn't happen last year is the big thing I have to say on that. Nicholas Gray, thank you for your super chat as well. Ryan has taken hard hits at Kansas, Talladega, and now Daytona, remembering me of the Elliott Sadler flip. Yep, exactly. Another perfect example. Sadler's flip in 2003 at Talladega, which was also on the back straightaway, and also a situation where a car just abruptly turns sideways, and these cars just turn into wings when they're sideways at that high of a speed. How fast does a plane need to be to get off the runway? I mean, we're talking about the same kind of situation. A track like Talladega has runways in the middle of it, from the facility that was there before. So, he's had some very hard hits in his career. Preece has had, definitely the Kansas wreck when he had the consecutive last place finishes. The Talladega one, I'm trying to remember that one offhand, but definitely some hard hits there that he's had with various teams there. And it's one thing to look at. But hopefully we'll get some more updates on that. Do we have any other news on this? I'm not sure here. I guess we can keep Pockrass's page still up here as we have for the inspection results. Okay, we do have one. 4 minutes ago here, this is a post from NASCAR retweeted by Bob Pockrass here. Ryan Preece has been transported to a local medical facility for further evaluation. So Preece has not been checked and released from the infield care center. He has been transported to a local medical facility near Daytona. I don't know if that's Halifax or if it's a different location there, but he is going to be evaluated further. There's no other word on his status beyond that. We did see him climb out of the car and be brought into the ambulance. Beyond that, we don't have any other details, so I certainly don't want to speculate on that. But again, it's good they're keeping an eye on him. I think that's the important thing with this. We'll hopefully have some more updates on that in the near future here as well. On this same note, I definitely want to, we're going to kind of jump the gun here on the show and tell portion. I've decided to wear the show and tell thing here instead, because of course we had some very big news today. Really within and without outside the racing community. In a separate note there, I want to talk about condolences to the family and friends of Bob Barker. Again, the face and voice of The Price is Right. Passed away at the good old age of 99 earlier today. We should all be so fortunate to live such a full life as his. I know one of my staff writers, Ben Schneider, is very passionate about game show history there for sure. So definitely want to make sure to make a mention of that. And then, of course, the other news that came today was the story with Kurt Busch and his retirement from the Cup Series. Now, I was at Las Vegas last year when Kurt made his announcement that he was stepping away from full-time competition this year in this season, and just seeing the emotion from that. He had a very hard time even saying the words last year with that, and I know that was a very difficult situation for that. So that was... I still felt at the time of that interview that is like, well, look, he's not done. I really felt like, okay, he's going to reevaluate things. We have seen several cases of drivers that have stepped away from the sport, and ultimately, they don't want to really say that they're retiring because, maybe they want to extend the opportunity that they get back out there. And I really felt, even through all this year, and especially for how involved Kurt has been, he's been as visible at the racetrack as he ever has. He was right there during what happened there with Ty Gibbs at Phoenix last year, and helping handle that driver swap from the awful events of that weekend there. But also he's been there for much better times as well. And the progress that team has made, and of course, this being a day where now 23XI has had both their cars qualify for the playoffs. It's absolutely been tremendous there too. But I remember one other part of his interview, he said, look, there's other things that he wanted to accomplish. He wanted to win Darlington, which he never won. He wanted to win Watkins Glen in the Cup Series. He won there in the Busch Series, but not in Cup, and that was something he wanted to accomplish. And the thing I was particularly intrigued by was that he mentioned that he won Michigan with all the other manufacturers except Toyota. So he really wanted to have a chance to get back into Toyota and be able to win with the team. So I really felt on that day, and really ever since, that it would be a good chance of him coming back. And maybe not, I didn't think this year, but maybe next year as a part-time thing, maybe something further along. We've seen drivers that have had so many serious injuries and come back in, whether it's Ernie Irvan or Ricky Craven, just to name a few. So many other drivers over the years. Even Johnny Benson had a serious injury at Daytona 2002, and then came back and won Rockingham later that season. Again, the dangers of the sport. These drivers are gladiators, and they compete through a lot of different circumstances here. But unfortunately, the news, of course, came out earlier today that Kurt Busch is now confirmed he has retired from racing. And all I could say is, just congratulations to him for a tremendous career. It's going to be different. It's the end of an era. It's going to be really different with him not out there. I think we're going to really not fully realize this until next year, when we also don't have Kevin Harvick out there at the same time. Drivers that had raced, again, in 2001. You see both these drivers kind of on their ascendancy in my 500 Days series. It's going to be different without them in, behind the wheel. But, I'm having to, as sad as that is, and I do think it is sad, and it's something that you kind of wonder, because, of course, I'm sure Kurt wanted to retire on his own terms and not have circumstances decide that for him. I think the nice thing is much like we've had with Dale Jr., I think that he's still going to be in the sport. He's still going to be a part of the sport. I think he's fantastic in the booth. I've heard discussions of this already, much like Harvick. I think, both of them would really help kind of elevate, fix some of these problems we've had in the broadcast booth here when they kind of get some more chances at that. And I certainly hope that they do. So they're not going to, it's not like they're going anywhere. That's always kind of the challenging thing when it comes to drivers in the sport. But yeah, on a personal level, I know Kurt was always a fantastic fantasy pick. I have a video somewhere of me hooting and hollering at Sears Point in 2011 because I was rubbing it in Last Bro's face where he pulled off the victory there because he picked Jeff Gordon and he got second in that race. And so that was pretty funny. I tried to find it for here. I couldn't find it on my hard drive here. If it turns up, I'll probably post that at some point there. I did find the pictures from that weekend, so I was sharing those a little bit earlier today. But I think that's going to be the positive thing going forward there. And really kind of to be in awe of Kurt's career, really, for all the teams that he drove for. Again, kind of the show and tell thing for here for this. This is the only Kurt shirt I really own, actually. I bought this in 2012. Thankfully, I got it as a 2XL, or I wouldn't be able to cram myself into this thing. But once the news came out today, I definitely brought this one out of the archives here. This is his time in Phoenix Racing. We talked about Kurt Busch losing his ride with Penske Racing. I brought this up in the context of, media members and drivers losing their rides and stuff in the past. This was, of course, relevant to Kurt's career there back when he lost his ride after the 2011 race at Homestead, gets the ride with James Finch. There's, of course, some very notorious clips online of him just like leaning into the crew and venting his frustrations during what was a difficult year. But one of the high points of that season was at Sears Point. which was the same weekend I picked up this shirt at the track, where he came out there and was driving a former Hendrick Motorsports car. The full story is actually in my episode of Rise of the Field Fillers on Phoenix Racing. But having a fantastic run that weekend, was very close to taking the victory from Clint Boyer. Both of them were dominant in that race, and just had a tremendous performance out there. Unfortunately, clipped one of those tire barriers and messed up the handling of the car a little bit. Tony Stewart ultimately did get second from him, but easily he was the second best car of the day, despite the third place finish and what it showed. And we saw a lot of emotion from that, as we did with his win in the July race at Daytona in the Xfinity Series a couple of weeks later as well. Yeah, I mean, the man has had just a remarkable career, having consistent success with all these different teams. I've seen a lot of comments here about the times he drove for Furniture Row. Certainly was a huge part of that team's ascendancy. It was played just as much of a role in it as Martin Truex did, and Regan Smith did. Those drivers together really put that team on the map. And, Kurt didn't quite pull off a win there with the team, but definitely made it into a situation where Truex could win races and win championships. And then, of course, his times driving for Chip Ganassi, and to make nothing of what we saw back in 2001 with his efforts in Roush before he even got a sponsor. I think where we left off in 500 days, we're still talking about the rumor of sponsors joining him on the 97 team when he started off the year with no sponsorship. And that was even at a time where he was a very highly anticipated rookie, given his success in the Truck Series as well. So for all that he's experienced in the sport, and as unfortunate it is to see it end as it did after, of all things, an accident in qualifying at Pocono last year, again, it's been a tremendous career for him. I think they did a very tasteful job in promoting that and discussing it there. And I'm glad he got to do the press conference there earlier today. So, yeah, just congratulations to him on his career. And I look forward to see what he's going to do next. Because, again, I think that's going to be the real exciting thing, much like we've seen out of guys like Jeff Gordon or Dale Jr., like we're going to see out of Harvick. And I'm sure Kurt's going to be in the same sense there, too. So that's definitely a tinge of sadness, but definitely want to make sure to bring this out here today on the notice of that. And I'm glad, and it's good that 2311 got both their cars in the show the same day. I think that was a nice way to kind of cap the moment there. I don't know if that had something to do with why he picked today to make the announcement. Maybe, but it certainly helped. I don't think it hurt the team's performance for sure. So I think that's a big thing to talk about too. Also, some other positives from this weekend to mention at the same time. Michael McDowell. There was also, I thought this was kind of neat too. They did kind of an effort where they had they brought Michael McDowell into Victory Lane with his family, because in 2021 the pandemic restrictions didn't allow him to be there with his family when he was celebrating in Victory Lane. So he gets back out there. And now he gets to celebrate with his family. They brought the confetti out and all that. And that was a really cool effort, especially after, him winning Indianapolis this year and him now embarking on his second effort to go into the playoffs. I think the timing was fantastic to do something there. I know some people were questioning whether or not that was relevant or whether that needed to happen or anything. But as much of a family man as he is, I know that must have been something that he was talking about for sure. And it's good to see the PR both at Front Row Motorsports and Daytona were able to work that out, because it seemed like it really meant something for him as well. And I think put him in a good frame of mind there too. And he did ultimately have a good finish in tonight's race as well. So I think that's definitely one to talk about at the same time. But I think it's just a tumultuous weekend for sure. We just only talked about really the Cup portion of it so far. We'll get into the Xfinity portion here. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We're up to 113 viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. We got more people here checking out on this. We're going to talk more about the Xfinity effort here at the same time, and we'll do some trivia here on the show. I know it's kind of a later evening show here, so certainly 8:30 here on Last Car headquarters, but I know much later on the East Coast. May do a bit of a shorter show here, so I don't have you guys staying up to all hours on this, but I appreciate you guys staying tuned here on this, and we'll jump into that there at the same time. So let's go into the Xfinity Series race here too, with Justin Allgaier pulling off the victory over Sheldon Creed. This is one thing I didn't mention on last week's show at Watkins Glen, a little moment. Perhaps you can call it schadenfreude, but it was something I thought it was a little bit funny. You do remember at Watkins Glen last week, Allgaier had worked his way up to the front of the pack there, trying to challenge Ty Gibbs for the lead. And there was a moment before the race restarted where they said, like, oh, tell Allgaier he's the man. Yeah, you're the man, Allgaier. You're going to go out there and you're going to pull off this win. And then just every terrible thing happens on that next restart. He gets knocked out of the lead. He drops back in the pack, and then he gets in a wreck in turn 5. And it was just an absurd situation. And the timing of that, I think, almost played out like a internet meme there. So it's nice to see in this recovery here, as much as I'm sure it hurt for Sheldon Creed to once again come up in second place. I got to say, I've been finding myself more and more sympathetic to Sheldon's effort in the Xfinity Series. I put him in the same category as Ryan Sieg here. It was good to see Allgaier finally break through and win an Xfinity race at Daytona. Again, beautiful paint scheme too. The Hellman's cars always look great. Obviously, you see the shirts that they made out of Dale Jr.'s version of it there. So kudos to him. And, as much as I would have liked somebody completely crazy to win, and we had plenty of contenders that were still survived a lot of the wrecks. It seemed like a lot of the big wrecks still did involve a lot of these different drivers out there. Guys like Josh Williams that you would see kind of work their way up there. Blaine Perkins also looked very good despite his last place run at Watkins Glen and being able to be back up there. But a few did work their way through, and it was good to see them have some decent finishes there at the same time. Ryan Sieg was among your last place contenders there. He started in last place, although he had multiple drivers actually come down pit road for pass-through penalties at the beginning of the race. This was a very intriguing segment. This one I was watching off-site, so that's why I didn't have the graphics and stuff posted during my updates yesterday. The article for the race has been posted already on LastCar, so if you haven't seen that, it's definitely been mentioned there at the same time. Again, I thought what I thought was intriguing was you had these 5 cars come down pit road. They basically formed their own draft where Jeb Burton was leading it and Jordan Anderson was at the tail end of it. And they actually kind of worked their way up there to actually start catching the tail end of the field. Before the race actually reached the end of stage 1, they got around Natalie Decker, who had kind of lost touch with the pack in the Wawa number 53 there. Were able to kind of catch up and catch the tail end of the field and kept themselves from losing a lap, which was fantastic because Allgaier was actually among the drivers in that pack. So that was really amazing. I wish the broadcast covered it better and actually showed that drafting line. I don't think they even showed it once, but they just kind of mentioned it afterwards, like, oh, they didn't lose a lap. It's like, well, there was a lot more going on than that. When you have these guys, it's very rare to have this many drivers have to do the pass-through penalty, especially at a super speedway. But thankfully, at a super speedway, you can form a draft like that and not lose a lap. We've seen this happen. I mean, it happened in Fontana, I believe, last year. You had a situation where he would get back out there and see if they could actually catch up to the tail end of the field before a caution came out. And sometimes they would, and sometimes they wouldn't. And I thought that was a really dramatic opening to that race there at the same time. But ultimately, they caught up there, including that beautiful Tommy Baldwin throwback there. I know Tommy Baldwin is dealing with medical issues there. And again, I want to extend more power to him. Prayers to Tommy Baldwin, who's currently fighting cancer from the reports that we saw earlier this week. But I hope that, when he was watching TV there, I hope he got some encouragement there from seeing Jeb Burton run as well as he did in the number 22 car, climbing up to finish in the 12th spot there for the number 22. I thought that was a great effort that they put together with that team. Unfortunately, got a little bit of damage along the way, but again, that's the same kind of deal that he dealt with there with Ward Burton back in 2002 when they won the Great American Race. And I love that Ward Burton was out there with him too. Of course, seeing his son Jeb being able to run that paint scheme. Not the first time we've seen him run it. Jeb ran the Ward Burton throwback with BK Racing during his Cup portion of his career there as well. So that was really cool to see too. But we'll see how things shake out for him the rest of this year. But again, I thought it was a fine effort there with the Jordan Anderson effort, and good to see Jordan Anderson himself out there. with Larry McReynolds as crew chief. I thought that was fantastic. We had just a great effort there from the Jordan Anderson team. Unfortunately, he got some damage there towards the end of that event. But again, to see him back out there, and again, he was so anxious to get back to the track. I saw him at Phoenix last year, and I'm glad he could actually kind of get a better showing out there, for sure. But to get all three of the cars out there, and again, all three of the cars went through that pass-through penalty at the beginning, and then climbed back into contention there at the same time. Parker Kligerman with the fourth place finish. Fine job by him. Again, they're almost becoming kind of just regulars of having great finishes 1 week to the next. I almost don't consider them as much underdogs as I would have with Jade Buford or the other drivers they've had in the past. Ryan Sieg in the 6th spot. Parker Retzlaff, the other Jordan Anderson entry, finishing in the 7th spot there. 1 spot ahead of Anthony Alfredo. BJ McLeod's team may not have got a top 10 in the Cup side, but this time here in the Xfinity effort with Alfredo, old Tony Sauce did a great job there, and so good to see there as well. Same thing for Gray Galding. If there was a team out there that really needed to have a great run, it would absolutely be Bobby Daughter's SS Greenlight Racing effort. They have had so many problems, mechanical issues, crashes, failing to qualify for races, countless different drivers cycling in and out of those seats. They bring back Gray Galding, who ran that 08 car as well as it did a few years ago, has consistently been a great super speedway driver to crank out top 10s, gets another one, finishes in the 9th spot there in the 08, the Panini effort. Great job for him. I think that was one of the big ones from the weekend. The other one to talk about for sure was Jeffrey Earnhardt. Remember, talk about Kligerman earlier. Earnhardt and Kligerman tangled on the track there when Earnhardt was on his way to a top 10. Kligerman had a good finish. Earnhardt did not. You know he's had this date circled on the calendar, and in a year where he has been out of that car for a number of races, swapping that ride with other drivers that have stepped in, he comes back out there and gets a decent finish. Definitely deserving of recognition there for that effort too. Same thing with Joey Gase. Just got it brought on to the National Crime Prevention as a board member. The council, rather, the NCPC. Great effort by Joey out there, getting a good run there for the Emerling Gase team. I know it's been a bit hot and cold this year, trying to get some good performances out of that team. But again, a driver that has, been a strong contender on the super speedway tracks, getting a good finish there in 14th. Kyle Sieg was so good at Talladega in the spring, driving that Davey Allison throwback. A lot of beautiful cars in this race. That's why I was putting the polls up there on Friday. I think this was probably one of the nicest looking fields of cars that we've seen in any series, especially in the Xfinity series here this past weekend. So that was really cool to see. But Kyle Sieg getting a good finish out of that car as well in the 13th spot. I'm seeing some comments here about the Wawa cars as well. I thought those were amazing. We got those different 4 cars out there for the different, the Rechargers drinks. We don't have Wawa over here in California, but I imagine it's a big thing in different regions there. But that's a cool thing. You kind of learn more about other franchises and what they have there. Really cool effort there. Natalie Decker, J.J. Yaley, Brett Moffitt, and Joe Graff Jr., all of them running different paint schemes. I was kind of interested, not as many people like the Joe Graff one. Actually, when I saw it on the track, that actually looked better than the render. So I think that was pretty cool to see. Unfortunately, all 4 of them got in one wreck or another at one point. Moffitt had like a whole fender pulled off of it there. But again, I thought it was really cool to have like a concerted effort across 4 different underfunded teams. Operation Desert Support style from like 1991 and the Daytona 500, where you had all the cars with the different branches of the military. I hope we see more of this. I mean, I know the common comparison is to J.D. Stacy, who put his name on just as many race cars as he could in the early 1980s, and all of them with slightly different paint schemes. But this time around here, I thought that was really cool to see with these different cars, and pretty cool promotion too. Even if it's just something is just average as just drinks you buy at a gas station or a convenience store, it shows that you can still make that really exciting with some good paint schemes, and also help out some teams that are struggling at the same time. Of course, Yaley driving for the other Bobby Daughter effort there, the number 07. Unfortunately, he finished back in the 30th spot there. We talked a little bit about Ryan Ellis. He was one of the underdogs and unfortunately had a rough evening. Him wrecking in about the same spot that we saw Brennan Poole wreck in tonight's race here. Ellis back in the 32nd spot there. But your last place finisher there was Alex Gwinnett, who's involved in the big wreck from that race, which was exiting the Tri-Oval. We didn't get a good shot of what exactly happened with Gwinnett. He definitely ran in the back of another car and was leaking some fluid on the track. That dropped him out into last place there. It seemed like there was a secondary chain reaction behind the initial wreck that had Brandon Jones after contact from Anthony Alfredo. Looked like Gwinnett may have gotten the back of Kyle Weatherman's car. We saw there's one shot of one of those replays where Weatherman's car kind of spins out after the wreck seems to have more or less kind of slowed down. So there must have been a secondary pileup. Same situation for Natalie Decker and running the back of another car. There were some reports that Decker ran the back of Riley Herbst's car, which had, of course, had that flat tire that shredded the fender off there at the same time. But Gwinnett has his first last place run in the Xfinity Series. He's now one Cup Series last place finish away from completing the last car Triple Crown. He finished last in the Truck Series for Mario Gosselin's team in 2014, I believe. So a number of years ago there, but it was nice to be able to talk about him. They actually had a great press release that was posted online there to talk about the different sponsors that were backing him. Gwinnett actually had a great run at the Chicago Street Course, which admittedly was cut short because of the rain, but he still was able to get a 15th place run out of that. So that was a fine effort for him as well. Hopefully it helps him get some additional Xfinity runs, and hopefully they turn out a bit better than this one did at the same time. So Gwinnett, your last place finisher. Again, that article already posted on the site. Connor Mosack, Brandon Jones, Natalie Decker, and Joe Graff Jr. in the bottom five. Two of the four Wawa cars finishing in the bottom five with Graff and Decker in the process there. Trevor Bayne looked like he had a shot to win another Daytona race after the 2011 Daytona 500 winner unexpectedly came back to the Xfinity Series for a few races in the number 19. Stepping in for Ty Gibbs, who is focusing much more on his Cup Series effort and trying to make a push into the playoffs. But in this case here, ends up being a 29th place finish for him after being involved in another accident that happened off of the Tri-Oval, finishing back in the order. John Hunter Nemechek, his teammate there in the number 20, who I still think should be considered a favorite for the championship this year, ends up back in the 28th spot here as we get closer to the Xfinity Series cutoff here in a couple of weeks. Austin Hill was another certain favorite. He undoubtedly had the fastest car in qualifying by a good margin in taking the pole there. He just seems to find, again, another driver that something else just activates in this guy when he gets over to a super speedway. And I'm just kind of amazed by it. Again, even his teammate Sheldon Creed seems like he's just not on the same planet as this guy, but ends up getting involved, getting some damage there, drops back in the 23rd spot, still finishes the race under power after leading 36 laps, but clearly not the kind of finish that he was hoping for there too. Certainly a bit more crash-filled than that. We tend to see that more in the summer races than the spring, but Justin Allgaier prevails in that one too. And Sheldon Creed's search for a first victory continues on into Darlington, where last year he very nearly won this fall race at Darlington before Kyle Larson decided to show up and kind of messed that up. So that would be another one to talk about at the same time. So yeah, again, I think we came into this race, I think, with a lot of anticipation as well. We should have. I think we had some fantastic racing, even with long green flag runs at Watkins Glen and Indianapolis. We did see some long green flag runs in the Cup race tonight. In fact, we saw green flag pit stops, which I think is fantastic. Yeah, I think that was something really enjoyable on this. Again, it's good that they're keeping a close eye on Ryan Preece. Hopefully things are still going on that, so we will see the situation on that. Uncle Daddy, thank you for the update there on Preece. Let me pull that up on his page as well, and we'll transition into trivia here in a little bit for the latter part of the show. Let's see here. I want to kind of get that pulled up. Pending the results of post-race inspection, the article for the race today will be posted a little bit later tonight. Those of you on the East Coast, I guess that'll be in the early morning hours for tomorrow. And then there will be an article for the Truck Series race in Milwaukee. Our other rider, William Saki, will be in the grandstands for that. That's his home, one of his home tracks. He lives out by Road America. We tried to get him credentialed. Unfortunately, there weren't enough seats in the media center this year. But no problem on that. We're gonna get some good coverage on that. I'm gonna be working on the article, and we'll get some stuff going there in the meantime. But it looks like there's gonna be a lot of anticipation for that race tomorrow. So that one, I believe, will be a good show here at the same time. Milwaukee, in my mind, always stands out as kind of the race that's usually the same weekend. At Sears Point, famously, the situation with Eric Almirola winning that race that he wasn't in, where he started the race and then Denny Hamlin took over his ride there and pulled off the victory, and Almirola got credited for his first win there. That's definitely a moment that stands out because it happened the same weekend at Sears Point. And that was how far he actually had Hamlin had to fly to get over there, and ended up missing the start of the race and just the kerfluffle that happened from there. That's another thing that came up in another video, certainly in the beginning of the end, Ginn Motorsports video there that myself and Slapshoes narrated. So we'll see on that if there's any other bizarre aspects of that race as well. This being posted 26 minutes ago on here from Ryan Preece Racing. Ryan was transported to a local hospital where he is undergoing standard tests. He is awake, alert, and obviously shaken is the phrase here from Ryan Preece Racing. This, again, being posted from Ryan Preece's Twitter feed on that. So he is awake and alert, as he had been at the track. But they are undergoing standard tests. Hopefully we'll get news of a discharge here, if not tonight, certainly in the morning. So, again, I think that's a positive sign going forward. That, again, they're keeping an eye on him, just making sure to run standard tests there after that. So we'll have some more updates there along the way. All right. I'm just checking out the air comments here. Willie B, you're at watching this the college party night. Right on. Well, thank you for. I hope you're not too distracted from the party there, but I appreciate you tuning in to the show tonight. At the same time, we got a good group in here tonight too. We'll do some trivia here if you'd like to stick around for that as well, and we'll jump into that. I kind of wanted to check out some of this here. Let's see. Gen 7 car. Oh, okay. Just kind of checking this out at the same time. Let me see. To transition into the portion of this, I kind of want to also mention, let's see. So other projects that I'm working on here at the same time, because I've been posting some updates here for those of you who are in the Patreon. And if you are interested in other updates on the site there from what videos I'm working on, or other updates on the book that I'm doing on Derek Cope, we're still hoping to get that released later this year. A lot of things going on right now. That's why we're not doing as much trackside coverage right now, which has been great. Been able to kind of free up some time to get all that going. So the video on Chuck Bound was posted, I guess, going into last week's race. So big thanks for those of you that are checking that out. The next video that I'm planning on releasing is going to be the long-anticipated next episode of Rise of the Field Fillers, episode 11, which is going to be on Mach 1 Incorporated. It is going to feature an interview with Larry Gunselman. I have made a lot of progress on that this week. I was adding clips from the interview that I did with him, and that is going to be the next video. I'd like to be able to have it available for those of you in the Patreon this coming week at some point. I think we're pretty close to that. It'll be a little bit of a push to get it done in this week, but I think I can get that done. So those of you, if you are at the $5 and up level of the Patreon, again, patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock, you'll have advanced access to that video before it goes live on YouTube. So that'll be in the works here. The video its current running time is just over an hour and 53 seconds, not minutes. It's not gonna be a 2-hour video. But I think it's going to be really interesting. Larry was a fantastic interview. I really wanted to highlight the best parts of that in this. And that's going to be coming up here very soon. So that is the next video I'm working on. The next video after that is most likely going to be another standalone project. This is going to be one with Mike Harmon. Again, I kind of teased this a little bit last week with the sponsorship that was on Casey Carden's car at Watkins Glen. That was not out of the blue. That was actually something that Mike and I are working on here to do another standalone video on. I don't want to go too far into the subject matter of it here, but I think it's something that's going to be really interesting there relating to Harmon's team. That'll be also similar to a lot of the small team efforts there that we talk about on the site. So that is going to be most likely be the next video I work on. I don't anticipate that one taking as long to make. It's probably going to be a much shorter video. I'm actually in the process of actually transcribing that interview earlier today before the race started tonight. So I need to get that finished and then finish up the script that I've started last week. And that will be the next script that I'll be recording. And then after that, 500 Days is still very much in the works. That's already been recorded. And the next episode on the spring race at Darlington, which of course will feature both Kurt Busch and Kevin Harvick among the stars of the Winston Cup series of that season. Of course, you'll learn more about their seasons in that race as well. So I'm going to be very excited to have that come up there too. Don't have a release date set for either that or the Harmon video, but again, I'm hoping to have the Field Fillers one up very soon because it is directly relevant to another storyline from this season, and I think I'd like to make sure it kind of fits in with that. So the reason for that will be much more clear once that's up there too. So I'm very much excited to get that going. But if you're interested in other updates on that, if you'd like some LastCar stickers or other stuff I like to send out, newsletters and whatnot, definitely the best way to check that out, patreon.com/LastCar on Brock. I like to send out thank you notes and everything that I sign and things of that nature too. So if anybody's interested in anything like that, that's the best way to support the channel. If you're not able to join the Patreon, no problem. Next best thing on that is we have the lastcar.info store, which has a link on the page, where again, most of it's stickers, or if you're interested in a hat like the one I'm wearing here, I get those embroidered through a local business here, and I could get that arranged there for you. Also, and if that doesn't work for you, easily the best thing is just keep sharing the videos on this channel, whether it's these live streams or the produced content on here. And if that's not enough content for you, definitely check out NASCAR Man History's channel, where he also has videos that I've narrated for him on that page too. So we got that at the same time. So definitely that's a big part of it there too. So let's jump into some trivia here tonight. Go ahead and let me know which category you would like. So we'll bring out the 1990s Tiger Electronics deal, and I'll do a few questions here to wrap up tonight. We'll probably make it a little bit shorter of a show here. We'll just do a few questions and then wrap up for the evening. We'll see if we have any other updates there on technical inspection. Again, unofficially, we got Chris Buescher as the winner. He was disqualified from this race a few years ago with a technical infraction, so we'll see what happens. But he was not the race winner that year. We had, and of course, the last place finisher with Brennan Poole in that case at the same time. So again, the categories on here are NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Once again, those categories: NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Go ahead and mention in the chat which one you're interested in, and we'll jump into that at the same time. Oliver is it Folsey? Foisey. Thank you for the mention there about No Fear Racing in the 2000s. That is a possibility. There's a lot of interesting teams that kind of sprung up there for field fillers there too. So that's a possibility. That's not one I've currently planned out, but that could be something that comes up there too. Thank you, Bowser Jr. XD, for your super chat here. Two of the top 160 closest finishes within the same weekend. Xfinity finish is 16th, tied for 9th, and Cup finish is position 157, tied for 154th. So there you go. Yeah, that's right. The Xfinity finish was extremely close. The photo finish there at the same time. So that's definitely one to talk about at the same time there too. Let's see. I'm just kind of checking out the chat here as you guys pick which category you'd like, and we'll jump into that at the same time. Let's see. Martin Truex, the 2023 regular season champ. Yes, Clint Will. Thank you for bringing that up as well. So congratulations to him on that effort. Secured that actually midway through the race, which was interesting from how that played out with the accidents there at the end. Let's see. Yeah, Justin deserved it at the finish there too. Favorite Kurt Busch ride? Did he ever race the John Deere 97, Uncle Daddy? Yep, he did. He did race that late in the 2000 season. His first few Cup races before the 2001 Daytona 500. The John Deere sponsorship did not expire until the end of the year. Kurt had a very good practice session in the car, and that basically swapped him in for Chad Little before the end of the season. Again, something you don't usually see. I know we had the whole Noah Gragson thing. It used to be you didn't. That wasn't. I mean, maybe it was the '90s equivalent of a social media miscue there that would result in a driver getting swapped out. But it used to be very common that you would have drivers swapped out, even if they were a full-time guy, getting swapped before the end of the year. And that was definitely one example of it there. Kurt Busch into the 97 for Chad Little. Let's see. Yeah, last of the 2001 drivers gone after this year. Exactly. I mean, it's going to be very strange. Again, I really don't think that's going to be felt as much until the beginning of next year when, yeah, you don't have Harvick or Kurt driving. But again, hopefully by that point, we're going to have both of them in the booth or at least very close to it too. That would be certainly something to see at the same time. Chris Esposito, thank you for tuning in. I see your message there. Big fan of this. So thank you so much. I appreciate you enjoying the content there. Like I say, if you're interested in the advanced access to the videos or anything, definitely check out the Patreon, or if you just like some stickers there for any reason, I have those available there at the same time. But otherwise, again, yeah, just keep sharing the videos. That's the best way you can support the channel. We're very close. We got past the 19,000 subscriber mark last week. We're getting closer to 20,000, and hey, we'll see where it goes from there. It's a slow burn, but that's a-okay. No two channels on this website grow the same way. That's for darn sure. So that's the big thing. So we'll have that. Let's see. So let's go down here and see where we are with the categories. August 26th to 27th. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for the title there. Yeah, I should change the date on there. That's true. 98 thousandths of a second? Wow. You're right on, Bowser Jr. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Preece just tweeted. Do we have that? Let me get that. I didn't hook up the other screen, so that's why I'm not pulling that up that way. But we'll pull up this. Indianapolis. Okay, here we go. Yes, posted 9 minutes ago, Ryan Preece's own Twitter feed. The message is this: if you want to be a race car driver, you better be tough. Damn it. Fast race choice Ford Performance Mustang. I'm coming back. So, very good there. So he definitely has his phone and able to respond to it there. So that's definitely good to see at the same time. So, but yes, absolutely fantastic there. Oh, looks like I just got a message here. Hang on, I got it on that. Bubba Wallace fan. I believe this is our buddy Confirmation 07 here. Very excited there about Bubba Wallace making the playoffs as well he should be. It's going to be interesting, especially given the fact that Kansas is in the mix here among the tracks coming up here, and of course how good he's been competing at that track. That'll be another one to look at. Let's see. I got 1, 2, 3. I see 4 for tracks. I see a few for wild card. Let's do tracks. I think we did wild card last week. Let's do a couple tracks questions here, and then we'll do that. If you guys have any other questions for this race weekend or anything I forgot to cover, definitely let me know. As I say that, I should check my notes and see if there's anything else on my list here. Yeah, we mentioned that. Mentioned that too. Let's see here. Oh, GMS racing. I definitely want to talk about that too. Perhaps not the most surprising silly season news with the context of what's going on at Legacy Motor Club and their move to Toyota. It does kind of make Maury Gallagher and their Chevrolet effort kind of the odd man out in the sequence there. The news that GMS Racing is not suspending operations. They're closing at the end of this year. The team, of course, that has Grant Enfinger and Raja Carruth and Daniel Dye in the Truck Series, who will be competing tomorrow at Milwaukee. They're now going to be looking to just close out the year as best they can. Raja has had several good runs this year in that truck. I mean, we'll see if he can break through with his first win tomorrow. Grant Enfinger, of course, one of the playoff drivers, looking to get onto the next round. And then you also look at Daniel Dye, that's just kind of starting in the series here. Apparently, he has already made arrangements for next season. We'll see what happens with both Enfinger and Carruth coming up here. We've seen both of them dabble in other series. Enfinger, of course, making his Cup debut this year when he was driving in relief of Noah Gragson at Sears Point. And Raja Carruth has had many starts in the Xfinity series, especially for Alpha Prime Racing here. So we'll see what happens with both those drivers coming up. But a shame to see that team go. Spencer Gallagher, I consider, has been a very big supporter of the site and a lot of my work. You know, we've talked through other message boards and websites we've gone to in the past. Got to meet him in person at Phoenix a couple of years ago on the eve of a lot of the efforts there. It's unfortunate that, he had kind of stepped out of the driver's seat there after his win at Talladega. I know there was a lot that went on with that. But he was very excited for the future of that team at the time, this being a few years ago. Of course, a lot's happened since then with the next-gen car and the merger with the Petty team. But it's going to be a shame to see them go because I know they've had a big effort and a big impact in, really every series that they've competed in. Even some of their Xfinity efforts and, of course, trying to get into the Cup Series before the merger there. It's going to be different. And that's going to, much like we saw with Kyle Busch Motorsports switching away from Toyota there with Kyle Busch's new effort. This is going to have a big effect on the Truck Series next year in particular to not have those three rides out there and what's going to be the situation for those drivers. They have definitely championship level equipment and it's going to be a matter of where that's going to go. Is somebody else going to invest in the team and start something else up? Which drivers and which crew members are going to stay on? That's going to be interesting. But tomorrow at Milwaukee will be the first step towards really kind of understanding what that situation is going to be. So I definitely want to mention that at the same time. So we'll do a couple track questions here to wrap up the show here for tonight. First question that we have here. What track was the site of Ernie Irvan's first win on a super speedway? What track was site of Ernie Irvan's first win on a super speedway? That is our first question. Alrighty. NASCAR number history on YouTube. I need to check that out. I have not watched those videos yet, Andrew, but I do need to check that out. Because number history, team history, that's definitely something I'm always kind of into, for sure. Definitely got the code red out here tonight. Cheers to Kurt Busch and Chris Buescher for the win today. All right. What track was the site of Ernie Irvan's first win on a super speedway? The answer is Daytona, the 1991 Daytona 500. Daytona is the correct answer. And a lot of you got that. Pretty much all of you got that one. Too easy. See if we can get a harder one for you. Here we go. Here's a good history question. Who was president of the United States when Daytona hosted its first 500-mile race? Don't look it up. Try to guess it. Who was president of the United States when Daytona hosted its first 500-mile race? And not a race that we're not having this race on 4th of July weekend, but it still has that patriotic aspect to it there, for sure. With the race in late August. Who was president of the United States when Daytona hosted its first 500-mile race? I guess they anticipated that rhyming, but there you go. All right, we guess this is for Eisenhower. We got one for Hoover. We got one for LBJ. Who was president of the United States when Daytona hosted its first 500-mile race? The answer is indeed General Dwight D. Eisenhower. Eisenhower is correct. A lot of you got that one. Spencer Sandlin, I think you were the first on that one. And for Daytona, Joey Fairbanks, you were the first one on that one. Alrighty, next question. That was too easy. Let's get a better one here. We might have had this one, but let me go ahead and read this one off. What current, now keep in mind this is late 90s, what current Winston Cup track is also home for a Harley-Davidson test facility? What current Winston Cup track is also home for a Harley-Davidson test facility? What current Winston Cup track is also home for a Harley-Davidson test facility? For those of you that follow our trackside coverage, the next race that we're planning on covering for the Cup Series, as well as Xfinity and Truck, is going to be Championship Weekend at Phoenix. We're already starting to make preparations on that, so hopefully we'll be set on that. We already got Last Bros tickets, so we're getting that set up. Although, one thing we're looking to do more locally is checking out the ARCA West race at Roseville in September. So that'll be something that we're kind of looking into doing. That'll be the last weekend of September, which is the same day as the Truck Series race at Talladega. So that's something we're kind of looking to check out. Might just do that as a fan rather than media. I've never been to the All-American Speedway, even though it's not all that far from actually where I work. But that'll be something that we'll kind of check out there at the same time. So more trackside coverage coming up, and then we're really going to be looking ahead to next season. Now, what I really want to, we're really waiting for the schedule, kind of saving up here a little bit and trying to kind of do something bigger for next summer. That's something what we'd like to do. Maybe string a couple races together, especially after Last Bro did his cross-country trip just recently. That kind of got us thinking about that, and that was already kind of something we were looking at, maybe doing some different venues. And yeah, work out of the comfort zone a little bit and do something out of market again. So hopefully we'll have you guys along for the ride on that as well. Alrighty, what current Winston Cup track is also home for a Harley-Davidson test facility? I guess it's for Daytona and Charlotte and Rockingham and Cosgrala's Radio and Michigan and Pocono and Phoenix. Let's see here. What current Winston Cup track is also home to a Harley-Davidson test facility? The answer is Talladega. Talladega is the correct answer on this. Talladega is the correct answer. I haven't forgotten about my thought about doing a stream with the NASCAR Classics page. I haven't been using that page as much this week here. But I was thinking about doing something this weekend before the 400. It didn't really work out this week for today. Today got pretty busy. But maybe, yeah, for something down the line, probably for the off-season more likely. But I think that'll be fun there, especially since off-season streams, I don't usually do as many of those. But that'll be kind of a kick. So haven't ruled that out still. So we're still working on that. Right now the focus has still been getting the Cope book done, getting some more videos on this channel, and I think we're getting pretty close to both of those. All right. Let's see here. Okay, next question. What year saw Riverside change from a 2.7 to a 2.62 mile road course? Now, here's a tricky one. What year saw Riverside change from a 2.7 to a 2.62 mile road course? Go look it up. Try to guess that one. What year saw Riverside change from a 2.7 to a 2.62 mile road course? Let's see. Just kind of checking this out here too. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay. Gotcha on that. Okay. Alrighty, we got several guesses here. 1985, 1971, 1982, 85, 76, 1887, 2031. All right, we got several interesting guesses here. What decade beginning year saw Riverside change from a 2.7 to a 2.62 mile road course? All right, a little bit of history of a track no longer with us, unfortunately. Apparently, according to pictures that were posted on social media, it sounds like Auto Club Speedway is going that way as well with that. I have not been down that area since we escaped the snow that weekend, but we'll see here. What decade beginning years, what year saw, I left that out to make the question trickier, saw it change from 2.7 to 2.62 mile road course? The answer is 1970. 1970 is the correct answer. I don't think anybody got that. We got one for 71. Beast of Metal, you were pretty close. 70 is the correct answer. Let's say it like Rick Allen. 70. 70. NASCAR Winston Cup Racing. NASCAR Cup Series Racing from Daytona is brought to you by... Last Pro noticed this during the race. There was like, wasn't there a moment during this broadcast where Jeff Burton just screamed for like no reason? Like he was saying something like, it's like, and you gotta get back in line. And it was like, what? It's like, you don't have to yell that. Like, come on, man. Was it ever explained why? That's a good question. I don't know. I assume it probably, 1970. So that would be after the accident that Joe Weatherly was in. I was thinking maybe it would be adding the chute, but the NASCAR circuit had the chute for a really long time. That was one criticism of Sears Point adding it because it said it reminded them of that. I don't know. Yeah, I don't exactly know. I bought last year, a source that would explain it, and I should look this up. I have the books that, oh gosh, what was his name? I want to give the guy credit here. There's a 2-volume series of articles, pictures, and even a couple discs on it that has a history of Riverside Raceway. History of Riverside Raceway. I got to look up the name. I want to credit the guy that wrote it. Oh gosh, where is it? Circuits. Is it 2-volume? There it is. Dave Wolin with an intro by Doug Stokes. Dave Wolin made this 2-volume book. Called Riverside. I think the full title, let me see this. The full title is From Turkey Farm to Racetrack to Shopping Mall, 30 Hot From Turkey Farm to Racetrack to Shopping Mall in 30 hot, cold, and dusty years. Yeah, that about sums it up right there. If you're interested in that, let me put this up. It looks like I think this is the guy's eBay page. It should be. Yeah, I'll post this on here in the chat. All in 30 hot. Oh, nope. You don't need to get a feedback loop here. There you go. So if you guys are interested. But yeah, that book will probably have the answer. I should have brought it up here. I have Greg Fielden's books here right off camera, but I need to keep Dave Wolin's book up here too. That would be handy for that one. So there must be some reason that they changed it in 1970. But that would be a way they did it. They made the hairpin less of a hairpin? Yeah, okay, I'm not sure. There you go. Alrighty. Let's do one more question. Do we have any results on inspection? I don't think we do. Excellent. Eric Almirola posting, gave it all we had, P3. Let's see here. Owner points, I don't see. It's probably going to be a long inspection queue here for the playoffs here, so that's probably going to be different. Yeah. Interesting. Overheating being the issue. That was the problem with Todd Gilliland's car. They did say he was running like 330 degrees or something absurd on that. They basically told him to ignore the readings because the issue they had with the oil cooler was kind of messing things up. But yeah, overheating, ultimately leaving Gilliland in 32nd spot. So yes, we do not have a call on inspection yet. Probably won't for tonight, or at least not this part of the show. So we'll do one more question, and then we'll wrap up for today. Let me get a good one here. That's too easy. Let's see. I think we had that one already. Oh, we had that one too. Goodness. Alrighty. Okay, here we go. What is the last question for the evening, folks? What 500 lap race at Bristol ran without a caution in 1971? Let me reword that. That's not worded very well. What is the name of the 500 lap race at Bristol that ran without a caution in 1971? What is the name of the 500 lap race at Bristol ran without a caution in 1971? Andrew Bremner, when do you think the schedule will be announced? I hope soon. This is about the time of year I usually buy a new calendar, and then the first thing I do is add the race dates in there, and we're getting pretty close to having to wait on that here pretty soon. So yeah, hopefully we'll find out. Because that's gonna be the big thing. We're still kicking some ideas around. Excuse me. For next season, there in terms of what races we'll be covering. But again, I think we're gonna kind of try to lump some together and try something with that. I think that would be a lot of fun. Alrighty, what is the name of the 500 lap race at Bristol ran without a caution in 1971? That is our last question for the evening. All right, we got the Food City 500, the Volunteer 500, the Dixie 500, the Goodies Headache Powder 500, the Tennessee 500, the Volunteer State 500, the Gran Turismo 500. You're going to Atlanta. All right, on No Tires. Excellent. Sid and Marty Croft present the HR Puffin Stuff 500. Oh, that would be distinctive. There you go. All right, here we go. Last question tonight. What is the name of the 500 lap race at Bristol ran without a caution in 1971? The answer is the Volunteer 500. A few of you got that one. Joey Fairbanks, looks like you were the first one on that. The Volunteer 500. So that is our show for this evening, folks. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Again, still waiting to hear back on inspection. Hopefully we'll hear about that in the near future. But again, congratulations in the meantime to Chris Buescher. Congratulations to Bubba Wallace for punching his ticket into the playoffs. Congratulations to Martin Truex for locking up the regular season title. And to Brennan Poole, last place finish today, pending the results of post-race inspection. And, of course, congratulations to Kurt Busch for a tremendous career in the Cup Series. The website is lastcar.info. My Twitter feed is @LastCarOnBrock. The Patreon feed is patreon.com/LastCarOnBrock. Our next show is going to be next Sunday, Labor Day weekend, after the conclusion of the Cup Series race, the Southern 500 at Darlington. We will talk about the Cup Series race and the Xfinity Series race that weekend. We will also talk about the Truck Series race that is going to be run tomorrow at Milwaukee. We'll talk about the weekend news and everything else in between. We'll do some more trivia. Hopefully, I should have something else for show and tell next week as well. And we may even have a new video on the channel. So a lot of stuff coming up here. Can't wait to share it with you guys. So have a great week, everyone. Have a great evening as well. And I will see you all next time.